Great, got quite a few people here, so glad to have you all here. What we're going to do is, first I'm going to give some remarks. There's quite a bit of update from the legislature, quite a bit going on. So I'll give some remarks, talk about what's going on, and then from my end on the House, and then Senator Johnson will talk on what he sees going on from the Senate viewpoint, and then after that, why we'll take your questions. So I'm going to start off with the budget. Already work has started on the budget down there after the first week of a lot of ceremonies with the governor's condition of the state, and then the Chief Justice condition of the judiciary, and then General Orr's condition of the National Guard. Why? Then after that, we can get down to business. So we're going to be focusing on balancing our budget just as we've done the past 6 years, keeping spending under control and making sure that the budget is stable, predictable, and sustainable. We will basically manage taxpayer money the same way you do your budgets in your home or business. Guiding principles will be spending within our means, not using one-time money for ongoing expenses, not overcommitting and then wind up under-delivering, not intentionally underfunding programs in order to save and balance the budget. That's the principles we'll go by as we plan. Priorities will be education, Medicaid, public safety, skilled workforce, and soil conservation and water quality commitments. And no matter what, as is every session, we will find out there's more needs than there is that state government can fulfill. The governor's budget proposes to spend $7.7 billion from the general fund in fiscal year 2020. Governor Reynolds' budget actually spends 97% of the revenue after the economic emergency and cash reserves funds are filled. On K through 12 education, as you know, we've continually made K through 12 funding a top priority in the budget. It's the first budget item that is decided in the year. Iowa is recognized as a leader in K through 12 education funding. We have put $750 million of increase into K through 12 budget funding since 2011. So our total annual spending from the state on K through 12 education is $3.2 billion. That accounts for about 45% of our budget. That doesn't include property taxes, which account for $1.8 billion. So that puts us over $5 billion from the state of Iowa that we put into K through 12 education. In addition to the amount of funding rising over the years, Iowa has seen an increase in student enrollment in our schools, in the number of teachers, and in teacher pay. Governor Reynolds is proposing that K through 12 schools receive $93.4 million in funding in fiscal year 2020. The vast majority of that amount, $89 million, would be provided to school districts through a 2.3% increase in supplemental state aid. This would bring the state cost per pupil up to $6,891. Total cost per pupil in our public schools is about $12,000 per pupil. She's also proposed spending a good bit on transportation costs. We have school districts with high transportation costs, and so what we're seeking to do, what she's talking about, is buying down those districts that have above average transportation costs down to the average. The House and Senate, we haven't made up our mind as to what the amount of funding we're going to have, but those discussions are ongoing now and will be made very soon, probably in the next week, but likely will come in close to the governor's numbers. Medicaid, this is the fastest growing area in the budget. It now exceeds $5 billion. That includes federal money. This accounts for about 18% of our budget. Just 15 years ago, 1 out of 11 Iowans were on Medicaid, and now it is 1 out of 5. The governor is proposing to spend $1.4 billion in state funding on Medicaid, and then the federal government picks up the rest. There are three managed care companies now that administer the Medicaid program: AmeriGroup, United Healthcare, and Iowa Total Care. The legislature has heard from patients and providers, and we have put stronger oversight protections in place, both in law and in their contracts. The managed care providers, or MCOs, are also required to provide mental health services that are outlined in the law, which include the new requirements that were established in last year's new mental health reform bill. The governor is also proposing a reduction in the waiting list for kids that are to get onto the Children's Mental Health Waiver Program. We are continuing to monitor the MCOs and hold them accountable for how they deliver services. And I've said to numerous people, as I've gotten emails, that I'd be willing to assist any patient or provider that that's struggling to deal with the MCOs and the Medicaid program, and I'm sure Senator Johnson feels the same way, and we've done that. Sometimes we get resolutions, sometimes we don't, but we'll definitely do what we can. On taxes, this year is going to be spent looking at the tax reform bill we passed last year. It goes into effect for this tax year 19, and so we're going to be seeing how that's working. And there will be, I'm sure, some changes made, but by and large, income tax reform is in place and will stay in place, but there may be some tweaks to that law. We're going to be spending a multi-year or several years. There will be a multi-year effort on bringing in income tax reform, as there's many moving parts, and we want to make sure that it all works the way we intend it to work. This coming summer, corporate tax rates and tax credits are going to be looked at by a committee, interim study committee, over the summer. Also on the issue of taxes, we're going to be taking another look at reining in property taxes. So that's, I don't know what shape and form that'll take, but we've heard from people about the increase in property taxes. It's still a problem, and we're going to be looking at that. On mental health, that issue, there's been recommendations for several work groups to build on the mental health reforms that we passed last year. And mental health reform it's a major change in how we've delivered services. People no longer want mental health services delivered in an institution anymore. They want it done with people in their homes and in their communities. And so it's a major retooling effort, and it's going to take several years to implement it. The governor's budget, fiscal year 2020 budget, provides more funding to implement the changes that were passed. There is included $6 million committed for increasing the number of regional access centers and additional mobile treatment teams, or the ACT teams, around the state. The governor also is including funding for beginning the implementation of a children's mental health system. On Future Ready Iowa, the governor is, that's the governor's workforce initiative for apprenticeships, scholarships, and so forth to assist our manufacturers and getting more talent into the pipeline for them. She's proposing $20 million to begin that implementation. Broadband, another issue being addressed. Governor Reynolds is proposing $10 million for incentives to build out broadband. Now, many are already building out broadband on their own, but the idea is to speed up that process and continuing to encourage our telecommunications providers to build that out, especially when it comes to the rural areas. In higher education, Governor is proposing funding the Regents universities at their requested level. She's proposing $7 million each for Iowa State and the University of Iowa, and $4 million, which is UNI's request. The community colleges are recommended to receive an increase of $4.7 million, and private colleges such as Wartburg would benefit from an increase of $1.1 million she's proposing for the Iowa tuition grant. On capital improvements, UNI, looking at the renovation of their Industrial Technology Center that's been requested by manufacturers in the area to help train students with advanced manufacturing technology. The Board of Regents is estimating that this project, that is revamping the Industrial Technology Center, will cost around $41 million. And it would be, the proposal is for that to be paid for over a 4-year period, and for UNI to kick in some money for that too. On the SAVE extension, SAVE, Security, and Advanced Education penny. This is the 1-cent tax that has been in place for a number of years now, goes to pay for school infrastructure and property tax relief. We are hoping to get that passed this year. I know on the Education Committee that bill is already starting to roll through the committee. So I think we're going to be able to do that this year to help schools with their capital projects and other repairs and so forth. Judicial selection reform, we are looking at that. How we select our judges. It has become politicized due to the heavy influence of the Bar Association, a left-leaning group, into the process. So the goal would be to give Iowans a larger voice in who selects our judges within the commission process already outlined in the Iowa Constitution. First Amendment, faith and speech protections. We're going to be looking at that. This is protecting the rights of people to speak, live, and work according to their faith beliefs without fear of punishment from the government. This includes the rights of university students. Welfare reform, we're looking at work requirements for state benefits, which includes looking at the cliff effect, which hinders people from getting off of the welfare dependency. So that will be something else we look at. There's 4 constitutional amendment proposals out there. There is one that says there's no right to an abortion in the Iowa Constitution. This is to address the Iowa Supreme Court's ruling last summer. There's one on the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. Iowa is only one of 6 states that does not have a right to keep and bear arms in our state constitution. There's one on the governor has proposed to restore voting rights to convicted felons that have served their time and paid their debt to society. That's being looked at now and believe in committee. The governor is also proposing one to add protection for victims' rights to the Iowa Constitution. The other thing we had in the House that the Senate didn't have was just last Monday night we passed a committee report regarding the Iowa House District 55 election. House District 55 is up in the Decorah area, including Winneshiek, Fayette, and Clayton counties. I don't know how familiar you are with that situation, but the certified results were the Republican Mike Bergen won by 9 votes over the Democrat Kayla Cater. We voted last Monday night to seat Mike Bergen as a representative. We accepted the report of the committee that investigated that election. The committee used a fair and transparent and deliberate process in their investigation. They found no legal authority to open and count the 29 ballots that were in question. And they also found that the Winneshiek County Auditor and the Secretary of State acted in accordance with the law. So Mike Bergen has been seated as representative in the Iowa House. That's all I've got for now, and so I'll let Senator Johnson give you his update.
Good job, thanks, Sandy. Welcome everybody. I have a great job to come here when I follow Sandy because she does such a good job to detail what's been going on. A couple of comments, and Sandy's right on with the idea that the Iowa state budget is $7.6 billion. That's our money.